Welcome. You're joining me here today on the Encaustic Edge. I'm Melissa Stevens, and today we're going to follow up with my stylus lesson that if you go back and look on my list of videos, there is a video called What's Stylin', and that will take you through a couple other processes that you can use with the stylus. Today what we're going to do is look at stamping with the stylus. What you will need is, if you have an encaustic stylus, one of those, or a wood burning kit with the lamp dimmer switch. The lamp dimmer switch plugs directly into the wood heating tool, and then you control the heat on the lamp dimmer switch. The wood burning kit will burn at a much hotter temperature if you plug it directly into the wall, and it will not work the way that you want it to if you're going to try stamping on your encaustic paint. This is it in the package, and this is it not in the package. This is in use, and there's a little red dot on the top here that is lit, and that tells me that it is on. And as you can see here, what I've done is, for different techniques that I do, I put a little line on there. So I know that this line at the top is if I want to burn directly on wood. However, if I'm burning encaustic paint, I want to keep it on a lower setting, and it just depends on what kind of stamping I'm doing. Currently I have it set to this kind of middle line, which is the perfect temperature for when I have upwards of like 10 layers or so, 10 layers or more on my painting in order to take the stamp down several layers. The other thing that you might need are tips for your stamping. There's lots of different tips that you can buy from lots of different places. You'll also need a pair of needle nose pliers, and that is for taking tips off the top of the heated portion of your stylus. And I will include a list at the end of my video of places you can find tips and also the materials that you need for the wood stylus and the encaustic stylus. So on the painting, what you're going to want to do is you're going to go ahead and pick the tip that you want to have on top of your heated element. And what I like to do is work along the edge of the paper towel. So that way I always know exactly where I am. You can see I was doing dots earlier. And this time we're going to work with the diamond. What the paper towel does is, as we go along with our heated element across our painting in whatever design you want to do, the paper towel absorbs the paint. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for you so you can get an idea of how it works. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to kind of go in the middle here, and I'm going to start with my tool, and I'm going to set it directly on the paper towel. It doesn't seem logical to work through the paper towel, but if I did this directly stamping on the wax, I'm going to end up with a big muddy mess. It's going to get my tip all dirty, and you'll see with the paper towel, it's just going to absorb that heat, and it's going to absorb the stamp. So I'm going to get a nice clean image of the diamond. I kept it down a little too long, I think, and it went down almost to the board. So I look for the wax to seep in, and then I lift my paper towel right away. I don't want to leave the paper towel down for too long, because what it does is, as the wax cools around the stamp, is the paper towel is going to want to stick. So you can see I'm moving the paper towel each time I put my stamp down. I'm not stamping in the same section. Never used this stamp before, so this is kind of a new one for me. Stamp down, stamp up. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn this around so that I can see more clearly what I'm doing. Stamp, see the paper towel soaking it up, lift it up, and move to the next section. So it's really, really easy to come up with some sort of a pattern. You could potentially do this alongside a ruler if you wanted a really straight edge. And then as your paper towel gets used up, just move it to another section that's clean and stamp. Oops. So that's basically it. Then as you use your tips, you never want to take your tip off over your painting just in case it drops, because this is super hot. If it drops on here, it's going to start melting your painting. So always move your painting aside when you go to switch your tip. Use your needle nose pliers to turn it. And what I do, instead of turning the needle nose pliers, I actually twist my heat unit. Because it's a lot easier to just return this back to its original place so the cord isn't twisted than it is to try and twist the needle nose pliers with the tip on it. So the next thing you want to make sure to do is to set the tip down onto a surface that can take the heat. So this surface is already prepared for heat, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop it down over there to the side. Because I don't want to burn my hand on it. So then I can go ahead and pick from my other tips and choose a different tip. So we'll try this circle next and give it a minute to just kind of heat up. As you can see, I was able to turn it on there with my hand rather than with the needle nose pliers. Well, this is cool. Just very, very quickly, and make sure you listen for that click, because that tells me that it is fully attached to that end. Now I just need to wait a few minutes for that to heat up. Now what I could do, I'm not super satisfied with the way this looks, so what I would probably do is I would take a straight edge razor and just kind of try and clean up those edges, because they look a little waxy and messy. Kind of make them look a little more uniform. Also, on some of them, the rectangular shape that the diamond was on also melted into the paint. So I want to make sure that that's gone. And then the last step that I try to do with these is I will do a quick fuse, which basically kind of softens the edges of the stamp. Now this stamp isn't very deep, so I need to be very careful. I'm just going to heat it. I also want to get rid of those razor blade marks. So then it just kind of softened those edges of the stamp to make it look just a little cleaner. The color underneath of this stamp isn't super satisfying to me, so what I would probably choose to do is to fill those spaces with either some encaustic paint or with oil stick. Right now it's too warm for me to do oil stick. I could potentially pop on some color and it would fill in the space. And then I would just go in, after that cools a little bit, I would go in with my straight edge razor, and you can even see the divots that I created with the stencil. As the paint cools on the surface there, you can still see where those diamond shapes are. So I'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and test out the circle and see where we are with the heat. I'm going to just hold the circle all the way down here. Okay, so let's test it out and see where we are with the heat. Oh, yep. Okay, so that's a little bit more interesting. I'm going to just keep the paper towel where it is. You can see I'm holding on with one hand with the stylus in the other, and then all I need to do is peel up each time to make sure that the paper towel is not sticking, but it's not moving anywhere. So maybe I feel like it didn't go down enough. I could go back over the top of where I set my stylus down. I always kind of give it a little bit of a wiggle too, just to make sure that all sides of my stamp are going down. And in kind of an even way. Ooh, there we go. And you can tell, I'm going to lift this up so you can see, there's a little bit of a paper towel texture on the inside of the stamp. And that might be something you want to try and keep. This one in particular, it almost looks like a golf ball type of texture. I normally try and lose that, and that happens when I do the light fusing. And I'm just going to use this again to kind of clean up those edges. The surface, and then I'll go in here with my torch and just smooth out those edges. And then that's done. You can potentially keep those rigid edges, especially if you're going to add different color in there. Let's go ahead and scrape back on the diamond side and see how that turns out. So now this is all flush with the top layer. Could potentially do that. Now these aren't as deep, and because I softened those edges, I won't have as much success in filling those. So I'm going to leave those the way they are. I'm going to do a quick fusing over the top of my diamond shapes. So those are just some really easy and quick examples of how you can do stamping with your heat stylus. So let's go ahead and switch out again when you're painting. Sometimes it's easier to grab the side of a larger object, especially a circle, which doesn't have any flat edges that you can grab onto. Now, if you had a word that had several, like I just put a letter B on there, if you had a word that you were planning out with several B's in it, you could space them out so that while this heats up, I can just do all my B's at the same time. They all measure about the same width. It's about 1/2 inch or so. And so you can map them out accordingly. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually take the letter out and put it face down across so that I can figure out the spacing. So it heats up fairly quickly, and we can test the heat again. Sometimes I'll take a different painting that I'm playing around with to test the heat on so that I don't make any mistakes later. So it looks like my heat is ready. There's a B right there. It melted just fine. I want to just go ahead and show you what happens when I put the stamp down without any paper towels. So you can see it gets really goopy. And although you do get the stamp, it fills up with all of that melted wax that we would normally be soaking up with the paper towel. So clean, not so clean, still get the image. So I guess if you're looking for something a little bit more subtle, you could potentially use it without the paper towel. I wanted to just make a little comment about the paper towels. As you can see here, especially, I've got a really great pattern and lots of really cool, fun color. It looks different on both sides. A lot of times, if I'm doing a project with the stamping, it is fun to use the stamping part of the paper towel where the wax has soaked up and embed those into the paintings. But right now, because I want to add more stamps to this board, I'm going to go ahead and just tear off on the edge of my table so I get a semi-straight line, tear off that edge of the paper towel so that I can keep using it in an orderly fashion so that I make sure that I am keeping track of where my stamp is going. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the letter. It melts right away, and then you lift. Super easy, and it's very quick. As you saw as I was talking, there's not a lot of time in between taking off one tip and putting on another. And then as you can see on the B here, it's got a little bit of yellow on there. If I need to clean it, just kind of run the paper towel over it, and we're all set to do more printing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this demonstration and that you will join me next time I love sharing information. I love having this YouTube channel as an opportunity for all of us to learn from one another. And I look forward to getting creative with you next time.